today we're at episode 122, and we're picking up the same text that we considered in our last episode, and that's Matthew chapter 16 verses 13 to 20. I'm wanting to look at some other aspects of this particular text today. So we pick it up again in verse 13. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So yesterday we just considered briefly where they were at Caesarea Philippi, right in the very far north, above the Sea of Galilee, inland towards Syria and on the lower slopes of Mount Hermon. And that there was a sense of retreat about the passage, that they'd drawn aside for a little while and having time and catching their breaths and preparing themselves for what comes next. We're also approaching, I suggested, and we'll see it tomorrow really, the pivot point in the gospel where Jesus starts focusing and orienting his disciples toward his coming death. So Jesus asked the question here, who do people say the Son of Man is? And we considered that there's a measure of ambiguity about that particular question. And this passage has others, and we're going to come to one in just a moment. And that their answer to the question was mixed. They're reflecting what they're hearing. Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And we notice that Messiah is not on the list, that people didn't immediately associate Jesus at this point, not in Matthew's Gospel anyway, with the Messiah. And then he asked the questions, but what about you? Who do you say I am? And we consider that this question and what flows from it in our last episode, that it comes by way of revelation. Today I want to look at what comes next. So Simon Peter answers, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Now this is where we encounter what I see as the second ambiguity. I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. For Catholics it's pretty clear and unambiguous, because basically the same word is used, Petros, the word that is used to describe Peter. Peter is the same word that is used, basically the same word that is used for rock. Peter means rock. So the immediate interpretation, the most obvious interpretation of this passage, and it's the one, say, that the Catholic Church clings to, is that Peter is the rock on which the church will be built. Now I just want you to hold on to that thought for a moment. Peter's given name was Simon. Now I've heard Darrell Johnson speak about this. Darrell Johnson's a very good Bible teacher, a great preacher, and I think he's with the First Baptist Church in Vancouver at the moment, but he was a Presbyterian, and he was a good number of years at Regent College in Vancouver, teaching preaching classes, and he talks about this particular naming of Simon, and he says that Jesus renamed Simon to Peter. Now Simon, his best understanding of what Simon means is shifting sand, and he renames him rock. Simon to Peter. That there's an element of unstableness about Simon, and it's actually reflected in his character. He's He's quick off the mark, he's a bit erratic, he's impulsive, and he's not particularly stable. He's shifting sand. And it's clear that it takes a while for Simon to become Peter, for the shifting sand to become the rock. And he does in fact regress from time to time. In that beautiful passage at the end of John's Gospel in John chapter 21, where Jesus recommissions Peter after his failure in denying him, Jesus addresses him as Simon. 3 times he says, he asks, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Simon, son of John, do you love me? And even as he's calling him into pastoral leadership in the early church, he's reminding him of his natural weaknesses. And so, that's one possibility, that Peter is the rock on which Christ's church will be built. There is another possibility though, and this one draws me, and it is that Jesus is referring to Peter's affirmation, that it is the affirmation that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God, on which the Christ's church will be built. It's that statement, it's that truth that Christ is the Messiah, the Son of the living God, this one who was given for the world. It's that which is the basis of the church. And it's this essential truth that is received by revelation that is the basis of Christ's ongoing work in the world. And I want to suggest there's more reason to believe that this might be the case. While I give you the keys of the kingdom, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound on heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven, seems to be directed at Peter, to him specifically. Yet a little further on in Matthew chapter 18, he repeats the binding and the loosing bits, and he applies it to all his followers. And in John 20 verses 22 and 23, the risen Christ, as he comes and stands in that upper room with his disciples, breathes on them and says, receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone their sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. They are not forgiven. There's a sense that this authority of binding and loosing, forgiving and retaining, are not restricted to one person, but are the birthright of all the followers of Jesus. Think about that just for a moment. Your birthright, my birthright. We too have the capacity to do those very things. It's just possible that we've all been given a set of the keys of the kingdom and haven't yet realized it. They're in each of our pockets, waiting to be used. It's up to you. God bless you.